Hey folks, welcome back to the show. As always, we have a fantastic episode for you today. Now, for this episode, I would suggest for those of you who are a little detail oriented that you grab a notebook and a pen because you are going to want to be taking notes. My guest today is a wealth of information and we're talking about some pretty cool stuff. But before we jump into that, as always, thank you for being here. Please leave us a review. Definitely check out natnitum.com. Check out the new community, Longevity with Nat. We do live Q&As in there with me as well as with podcast guests. And we have resident experts that pop in every month to talk about their topic of expertise. We have Dr. Grace Liu from the Gut Institute. We have Rowan Sanderson talking on hormones, men's and women's. And we even have Dr. Amy Horniman talking about thyroid health. So lots of juiciness in there. So you can find out about that on the website, natnitum.com. You can also sign up for my newsletter. And we have two different newsletters. We have the main one, and we also have a peptide specific one for those of you who are just peptide crazy. Today, we're talking about 3 things that could seriously change the way you age. And really, that's what we're all about here, right? We're talking about metabolism, muscle, and immunity. And no, this is not some infomercial where we tell you to drink a weird green juice. We are talking seriously real science, real supplements, and real strategies from Michael Antonelli, a good friend of mine and an industry innovator who has spent his career working with top healthcare professionals, researchers, and cutting-edge biotech companies to develop science-backed solutions for better patient outcomes. As the founder of Healthgevity and a leader in precision diagnostics, hormone optimization, and advanced peptide therapies, Michael is on a mission to reshape healthcare with personalized strategies that actually work. So if you've ever wondered how to keep your metabolism from running on lower power mode, build muscle that sticks around, or keep your immune system in top shape, you are in the right place. I was so impressed by some of the formulas he discussed. So I asked if we could get a special discount, and Michael delivered. Truly, he always does. He's giving us 10% off at healthgev.com when you use my code NAT10 to save 10%. Hey folks, just a quick reminder that all of the information presented in this podcast is for information purposes only. No medical advice, no diagnosing, no treatments suggested here. Before you try anything that you hear about or learn about here, make sure that you check with your medical provider. Michael Antonelli, welcome to the show. It is such an absolute pleasure to have you here today.
It is great to be here. We've been talking about doing this for so long and excited about the next hour we're going to share with your community.
Yeah, me too. And you know, we were supposed to record a while ago and you actually got, I think it was it you that got sick or I think it was you that got sick.
It was me.
You were so sick. And everything happens for a reason, right? Because here we are, you've just released some of the most unbelievable formulas I've ever seen. And it all happens for a reason. At the end of the day, I firmly believe that we end up where we need to be when we need to be there, whether we think we need to be there or not.
Agreed. Thank you for allowing me to reschedule, but it was definitely for the right reason. It's worth the wait.
Yeah.
Tuning in. We're going to have a lot of fun today.
100%. So, Michael, for the audience, I think a lot of people, a lot of consumers, unless they're kind of hanging out in my group or are lucky enough to work with a practitioner that you work with, a lot of people are not that aware of Healthgevity. It is Healthgevity is the full name of the brand, right? It's the URL that's different. And so I think that the reason you're here really speaks to your commitment to the work that you do. And I would love for you to share with the audience a little bit about, what's driving you to do what you do, because I think that you have one of the most innovative brands out there when it comes to nutraceutical supplements. And we were talking about this earlier, like this podcast is really a little bit about pulling the curtain back on this magical brand and who you are and why you do what you do and all the things. And then we're going to talk about some of the challenges that people are facing and some of the ways that you've kind of gone about helping to solve those problems.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to dive into the journey because it's a rather long one, but it started in 2006. I started with one of the leading professional supplement brands, Metagenics at the time. Fresh out of college, really had no idea what a medical food was, what a nutraceutical was, but started rubbing elbows and became a sponge, learning from people like Dr. Jeffrey Bland, Dr. Mark Hyman, and in the Northeast, started working with the doctors that were utilizing Metagenics and seeing firsthand the power and difference that these incredible nutrients were making in people's lives. And from there, I just haven't looked back. I knew very early on where I wanted to end up. And I worked for various professional leading brands in different positions to become, that sponge, to learn different pieces, to get the confidence that I can do this. Along that journey, suffered my own health issues, but really it was more recent. And I don't talk about this much, but when I lost my dad to cancer, when you see the system fail your loved ones, that right there was when I really perked up and I said, okay, enough's enough. I need to help more people not end up the way I was. Then COVID hit and we just saw that whole mess unfold. That's when I started reading about David Sinclair and other researchers about the role of aging and its relationship to chronic disease. And here I am almost 2 decades working with leading healthcare practitioners in the United States. No one's addressing the root cause of aging.
Yeah.
No one's talking about harnessing the hallmarks of aging. And luckily, I've been going to the Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine since 2008. And, a lot of that was about lifespan. How do we extend life? But I think during COVID, we saw a switch where a lot of focus was now about health span optimization.
Yeah.
So if you're listening and your goal is to live to 150, that's great. I then had this light bulb go off and said, how do we maximize every single day we have the privilege and blessing of waking up alive? And talking with doctors I had a lot of respect for that were making tremendous impacts in their community, they started urging me to say, Michael, it's time for you to take this leap. A lot of the professional brands during this time stopped innovating, which is crazy, and spent more time focusing on setting up their own Amazon Prime store.
Yeah.
And throughout these 2 decades, I've created not only great relationships of frontline providers, but on the ingredient side, on the research side. And at that point, I said, we're going to create formulas that no one's been willing to do. We're going to stay nimble. We're going to put the patient outcome first. And we're going to put together these intriguing stacks that address the root cause of the dysfunction at multiple angles, where any doctor, any healthcare practitioner, or any educated patient or consumer will look at any one of our formulas and say, this company gets it. They care. They want to make a difference. And that's what drives us every single day. Healthgevity now is 2 years young, but the formulas we brought to market, we truly feel that it's going to translate outcomes and health trajectories like no other option.
Yeah.
And we're staying nimble. So I always say, don't fall in love with anything we bring to market, because as research evolves, as those on the front line give us the feedback, if there's opportunities to advance the outcome in the patient's favor, we're going to do that.
Yeah.
And that's what Healthgevity is.
And we've witnessed this, like you've got right now you're on 2.0, 3.0 versions of formulas. And, most of us are sitting there going, wait, what? No, what do you mean you're changing it? I love that formula. And you're like, yeah, it's okay. Relax. It's going to be even better. And it always is. So, or you go back to the drawing board and you go at the problem from a different angle. So I do, I think that in a world where there's so much skepticism and distrust of the systems, of supplement companies in general, where you get a lot of fairy dusting out there. You get companies that are being bought up by multinationals, and so it's diluting. Unfortunately, it ends up, it just ends up diluting the creed or the philosophy of a supplement company. Like Pure Encapsulations used to be the company that we would go to because there was never any additives, there was never any excipients, there was, it had all these hallmarks. And eventually, I think, who was it? Was it Nestle that bought them? Like somebody really big.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not that Nestle is evil. It's just that they have a bottom line that they have to meet. They have shareholders they have to be responsible to, and eventually it starts chipping away at what make these companies special. And so it's refreshing. And there's a couple of you out there right now really moving the needle on these supplements where you're so committed to the outcome that you'll like sacrifice profits almost, right? Like when we look at your formulas, there's no fairy dusting. If there's some amount of some ingredient, it's there for a reason in that amount. And so, and on top of that, there's the innovation piece, right? There's you're out there always looking for the next coolest ingredient. And we'll talk about a few of them that really move the needle for people. And I guess, you know, the third thing for me is the relationship that you have with the practitioners you work with that constant feedback of what's happening clinically and how you can make things better. So I know I'm tooting your horn here, but I think it needs to be done because I think it's important for people to understand. I don't do a lot of interviews like this, but I really wanted to do this interview because I just think it's important for people to understand who they're dealing with and who's behind some of these brands that are maybe not, they don't, you know, they're not the big fancy brands with all the bells and whistles, but you're just in the trenches doing the work. So
Absolutely. We try to stay under the radar, best kept secret, I like to say, but we're trying our best to interpret the latest research into these finished formulas, ingredient selection, collaborate with researchers and frontline providers, and create that middle ground of that approach. And yeah, I'm so honored to have this time to let people see what Healthgevity is and where we're going and the role that we're hoping to play with the listener's journey with their own health.
Amazing. I love it. So is there anything else you want to talk about on that front? Because I want to just dive in. I
think one other thing, because we're held to a different standard when we're working with healthcare practitioners, the majority of our doctors are utilizing the latest and greatest diagnostics. Mm-hmm. We know very quickly whether a Healthgevity formula is moving the needle or not. We're held to a different standard. It keeps us laser focused for that reason. And you've had some guests on over the years of providers that we partner with that are doing a variety of diagnostics, blood tests, stool tests, all these specialty labs. But it allows us to really see not only that baseline, but when a Healthgevity formula is added into the mix or multiple of our formulas, the change that's made. And so I always say that raises the bar, but it makes us a better brand because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And that's, you kind of have to rise to that challenge, right? And that you do. All right. Enough horn tooting. Let's get down to brass tacks. Let's talk about, we were talking about this ahead of time, and we wanted to talk about a couple of the issues that are most timely right now. And I think one of the amazing things about your product line is one of the we can see that the drivers of what you're doing is going after those hallmarks of aging. And we're not going to go that route in this discussion because I think that can get really technical and really kind of into the weeds. And I want people to be able to walk away from this episode with some actionable items about certain issues that they may be dealing with right now. And so I think the two things we actually talked about three, but it really fits into two big buckets. We decided we were going to talk about metabolic health, which is always a hot topic, but by the time this podcast release, probably will be right smack in the middle of holiday season. And so it's going to be timely for many people to be listening to this. And then we said we were going to talk about immunity. And then the next thing you know, we're talking about the gut. And then we realized really, and what we both know is that gut health is central to immune function. And if there's ever a time of year, right? We were singing, it's the most wonderful time of the year to get fat and sick, because it's the season of excess. It's a season where many of us fall off our routines. We stop exercising. We go out too late. We don't sleep enough. We eat the wrong foods. We drink the wrong things. And it kind of snowballs. So, which makes it easier to get sick. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about a few of the formulas that you're bringing to market or you've brought to market that really helps people to stay on top of some of these things both at this time of year and even at other times of year. So what I would like to say to people when we talk about a line like Healthgevity is you've got a vast array of offerings on your website. And this is where, because the formulas are so powerful, some of them you can definitely self-direct as a consumer, but there's going to be some in there that it's a good idea to speak to your provider and get some direction on, is this what I need right now? Right? Because it's very easy to go to a website like yours and go, oh, I need all of this, right? It's like being in that crazy M&M store they used to have at Times Square. Like you bring a 5-year-old in there and they're like, what do you mean my favorite color? I want all of them. And so, because clearly I have to have yellow. And if I didn't have blue, well, I would just perish. And so, we as consumers, we go to a website like yours and we can find a rationale for using every single one of those products. The fact of the matter is that we don't all need all the things all the time.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty, right? That's the beauty of the journey, right? Identifying what are your top 2 or 3 health goals or concerns as of today. And then month to month, you could pulse these in and out. This is all about, on an annual basis, optimizing pathways that are most associated with slowing down the aging process.
Yeah.
And so I love all these directions that we're going to tackle today.
Yeah.
And let's get going.
All right, let's rock and roll. All right, let's talk about metabolism. And when it comes to metabolism, there's 2 main themes that we want to address. We want to address metabolic efficiency, right? How we're able to support our metabolism to process the foods that we eat most efficiently so that they don't end up where we don't want them and we use them the way we need them. And then the other piece of the puzzle, which is very, very closely linked, is are we supporting our body in building muscle, which obviously as we age, our body does less effectively and efficiently. And those 2 things go hand in hand, because we know that if we have more muscle, it's easier for our metabolism to fire up, but we also need a healthy metabolism. So you have 2 central products with a 3rd one on the way that really speaks to this kind of constellation, if you will, of health. So fire away, Michael. I think I've been talking too much, so you talk. I'm done.
Tag me in. This is a huge area to tackle. And coming out of COVID, when we were looking at the literature, we were seeing that 8, maybe even 9 out of every 10 individuals were metabolically unhealthy. And so this was an area we had to get right to be a relevant new brand on the block. And this has been a formula you've talked about in newsletters in your community, but Ignite, which is now a 2.0. We made some major updates over a year ago. We had to get this right. And so understanding the underlying mechanisms of the root cause of the dysfunction was critical at first. Once we identify that, then we can work backwards. Mm-hmm. Look at the latest literature, the latest ingredients at the right doses. I try to make, the most out of all the capsule room.
Yeah.
And so
no wasted space.
Part of what we're evaluating is like, what's the best bang for the ingredient size, right? So I think that's, we're always trying to play for the long game here with Ignite and with metabolic dysfunction. A couple of key themes were coming up. Glucose disposal issues being central, insulin resistance, weight loss resistance. Then you start getting to these other cofactors of different hormone issues, adiponectin, leptin, ghrelin. How do we modulate this? How do we activate AMPK? How do we beige that tricky, sticky white fat? Perfect example when you reach that plateau. What happened? Why is it not working anymore? Looking at supporting healthy ketone levels, the role of mitochondria, right? That's also going to be another consistent theme in a lot of what we do. But these are all big buckets that we wanted to tackle with one formula. Because what we've seen on the front line with our provider partners is that compliance and convenience is critical for sustained success. So I never want people to walk out with a bag full of supplements, right? That usually isn't the ideal way to start the relationship. But looking at formulas that if you just had to leave with one thing, could you count on that one thing to make a difference? Mm-hmm. And so looking at, even another consistent theme at Healthgevity is utilizing emerging ingredients in bioactive peptides.
Yeah.
And so there was an incredible peptide that we were reading about called DNF10 that I know you've talked about a lot, that the more we read about it and to have human data back it up published, felt like a natural fit enough where that was the 2.0. We fit in the DNF10 at the full 500 milligrams. And that gave us access to that really elevated the formula. At that point too, especially in the practitioner channel, it was all just berberine. And when I talk to doctors, they're like, well, in order to really get to the levels I want in the literature, a couple of my patients are having some GI distress. So we also set on a mission to look at, are there better forms to help reduce the likelihood of that happening? And that's, where another no stranger to your community, Sean Wells, came into the picture, who, an incredible heart, also on a mission to bring together game-changing ingredients, and another key partner of what we're doing here. But dihydroberberine, if it's not on the radar, right, we look at what berberine converts to in the gut, it's dihydroberberine. So we're skipping the step. We can create more with less, which is another big check mark for us. And we look at dihydroberberine being 5 times more bioavailable and double the half-life. Made a ton of sense to go in here.
Yeah.
Then we look at, we see other formulas using bitter melon, but are there better forms, right? A lot of bitter melons are 4-to-1 or 10-to-1 extract. We're using one of the only trademarked bitter melons found all over the world. It's called Factor 21. Robust activity. It's only harvested a handful of times. It's also 8 times the price as a raw material, but we felt that was the one we had to use, right?
Yeah.
We're looking at other ways. Okay, well, what other are those key factors? How do we activate AMPK? There was some, there's 7 trademarked ingredients that make up Ignite, all at the study doses. One ingredient that the more I read about it, I'm like, why haven't I never heard about this before? And that's L-Beta.
Yeah.
And, L-Beta, coined as an exercise mimetic, which who doesn't want a little help, right? On the days you do work out, and who doesn't want to help the days you don't work out?
Yeah.
L-Beta, we felt, and even as of today, as we're recording this, we're still the only practitioner brand using L-Beta. But that's in here. So when we look at this wide net, because metabolic dysfunction is not a bullet, right? It's not a single agent.
Yeah.
It is, we feel, super complex. And this is why with this formula, right, you got to play around with the dosing. It's not the same for everybody. Some people have issues at night. Some people want that continuous slow drip with 1 capsule throughout the day. Some like all 3 in the morning, right? Set the tone, make better decisions. I'm not even sure if this is the journey you wanted to take on Ignite. But
yeah, no, it is. And I think it's important. I love what you just said, right? That, again, like so many supplements, it's like, oh, take 1 a day, take 2 a day, take 3 a day. And I remember when Ignite first came out, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a guy in my membership community who unprompted came out one day. He pops up into the community and go, hey guys, I got to tell you something. This is the craziest thing. I bought this Ignite. And at the time, that was the original formula of Ignite. He's like, I bought this Ignite formula. I've been using it for the last 30 days. I haven't changed a thing. I haven't changed what I eat. I haven't knowingly changed my diet. Maybe he did, but he didn't realize it, right? Because of the effect of this. I haven't changed my exercise. And he's like, I just dropped 10 pounds out of the blue. And I remember picking up the phone and going, Michael, you got to hear this. And you were like, wait, what? No kidding. That's amazing, because this is the feedback you were also getting from clinicians. But here's dude coming in off the street, bought a bottle and got this amazing result. But what I think is really fascinating is what you also just said, which is you got to play with the dosing depending on your particulars. And we don't get that from a lot of supplement companies, right? So in the case of Ignite, I think it's a 3 capsule a day maximum dose. Some people are going to do really well with it, 1 capsule 20 minutes before every meal. As you said, some people, they're really starving, kind of snacky. I can't stop thinking about food time. Might be, it might be in the middle of the day. It might be in the middle of the afternoon. It might be right before dinner. That might be the time to take all 3 capsules for you, right?
Absolutely.
Or is it in the morning? I'm a big proponent of people starting their day with a decent breakfast with a good amount of protein, but maybe for some people, like 10, 11 o'clock in the morning is that time when they start to really want food. So is this the time to dampen that drive so that you can make more reasonable choices through the rest of the day? So that whole story around personalizing how you use this product based on your personal experience, I think is really powerful as well.
It is, and it doesn't have to say you have to be locked in when you decide that dosing schedule.
Right.
There's flexibility even then. So if you know it's Friday night, you're going out to dinner, it's going to be a cheat meal, you can take more before that cheat meal. So again, this is just listening to your body. This is not a get out of jail free supplement, right? Mm-hmm. There's other critical things you should be doing in order to achieve your health goals. But it's certainly, I think, a vital part of the program, of the protocol.
Yeah. And I also, another indication for it I find is, in addition to, sometimes if people are using GLP-1 agonists, in addition to the GLP-1 agonist, when sometimes that effect starts to wane a little bit before people go jumping onto the bigger dose, could a supplement like this kind of help to take the edge off? Or as they're coming off the GLP-1s, could a supplement like this help in the weaning process to kind of pick up the slack from the GLP-1? Because I think that as spectacular as the GLP-1s can be, I think there's a lot of reasons not to want to be on them till the end of time, right? And maybe we still don't know what some of the effects could be for some people. And so maybe we want to exercise a little bit of caution, and we want to move into a different strategy, at least for a while, and not be so reliant on one single way of going after it. And I'm not saying that this is a GLP-1. Like you get all these supplements out there right now saying GLP-1 in a bottle. And I'm like, no.
It's a big buzz that's going to be even bigger in 2025, just seeing some of the emerging trends on the raw material side that is just warming up.
Really?
So yeah, get ready if you're listening. So just
hang on to your hats.
Research. You're in the right community here. So more to come.
Okay, great. Yeah. So we talked about metabolism a little bit. Now the other side, the flip side of metabolism, like I said when we started, and I'm going to cut you loose on this one too. Oh, and actually the last thing I want to say about a stack like Ignite 2.0, know that this doesn't happen overnight, right? You want to give it like 30 days, like DNF10 takes some time to kick in. So this is more of a slow burn. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and we didn't even dive into the data there. So DNF10 at 500 milligrams with over 120 participants, by week 8, the average participant was consuming 600 less calories.
Wow.
So it is not an overnight, but if you stay with it, great things will happen. So wow. I think understanding the data, and on our site, we cite all the references broken down by ingredient for those that want to take a deeper dive. We give you the ability to see everything we're seeing. We're formulating and choosing and how we're dosing.
Yeah, that's incredible, right? So 8 weeks, 600 less calories with the improved insulin sensitivity, because it's not just one thing, it's not just calories. So that's really fascinating. Now, if we were going to add a supplement to this beautiful stack, to speak to the other side of healthy body composition, I would have to say that it would have to be longevity.
I'm with you there. And I know it's a formula that you've been using personally.
I love it.
And it's one of my favorites, but they're all my favorites, right? I mean, it's like asking
your children.
who do you like the best? But this has got a great story. So wherever you want to go on longevity, I'm ready for it.
I'm hanging on here. You're talking, because like I said, I'm so enthusiastic here. I'm being a motor mouth, so I want you to talk. You go.
Part of our secret sauce when we're forming this global collaboration, I also look at, companies that are being acquired or being invested or raising a lot of money. Like, well, what are they doing? And it's catching other people's attention that are willing to invest money. So I try to get on the ground floor with emerging partnerships. Longevity was the launch of a partnership that's near and dear to my heart, that when I read about this company over 3 years ago, I got the chills. And it's very hard for me to have that feeling, but when we are focused on bringing orally bioavailable peptides to the United States, it made sense that Noritas, this incredible company out of Ireland, when I read about them, I said, I need to get them on the phone. And I literally reached out to everybody on LinkedIn that had Noritas somewhere in their history until somebody responded. But let's talk about what is so incredible about this partnership. Noritas, over the last 10 years, has brought to life what they call the magnifier. It is leveraging artificial intelligence to source nature for naturally occurring in peptides and catalog them.
Wow.
So we could play a game if you want. But as of today, how many peptides do you think this group has analyzed and cataloged in their library?
Oh, I think I read about this. It's like in the thousands, isn't it?
As of today, over 9 million.
Holy cow.
So when all this stuff was going on with 503As and Bs, if you're in the US, you know about all this. I was like, this is the future. This is where it's going. This saves countless amounts of years in peptide discovery and then facilitating. So they're able to identify, let's just talk about the topic here, muscle loss. Mm-hmm. They are able to, almost like a ChatGPT in their catalog, is create this algorithm to identify from 9 million to maybe 1,000. Then they can rule out or rule in what is going to be bioavailable for humans, at what dose, what group of peptides, and then they're able to do preclinical and then human studies. So when I read about this, I said, this is the answer. Mm-hmm. You know, let's stop fighting about who has the best BPC 157. Although, if you haven't seen ours, check it out. This here was the future. So I reached out, we brought this group into the United States. PeptiStrong is their first peptide discovery, 3 human studies published now. And we look at PeptiStrong and solving, and this is why I call the product longevity. Muscle mass is such a critical predictor of how well or how poor you're aging. And we look at now, even we're starting to better understand things we didn't even know when we launched this formula. So this is a peptide matrix, multiple peptides identified from fava beans. And know if you're eating fava beans all day, every day, you're still not getting enough. This is, obviously there's a synthesis involved to get the right dose. It outperforms milk-based peptides for activating muscle protein synthesis. It modulates fast and slow twitch muscle fibers. It reduces inflammation induced by exercise. There's now data showing it improves bone density. We have data showing it shuttles dietary protein into the muscle. We also show that it's outperforming things like leucine and HMB, although there's a synergistic advantage, which we'll get to about the powder that we're bringing to market. But when we think about what our doctors are seeing every day, age-related muscle loss, immune-related muscle loss, prescription-related muscle loss like statins and GLP-1s, to your weekend warrior to seasoned athlete. We wanted to create a formula that was relevant to all the above. And so PeptiStrong is the base at the 2.4 grams that represent the published studies. Now, this is now a 2.0, so you might not even notice that. We did just revamp it. There's a second peptide discovered by Noritas. It's a lentil-derived peptide. It's called PeptiPump, but it's an ACE-inhibiting peptide that's critical for blood flow into the muscle. We launched PeptiPump earlier in the year in a formula we call Cardio NAD, but in the 2.0 longevity, it made a lot of sense to stack these together. In addition, there's 2 ginsenosides that we have in here. Ginsenoside RG1, the trademark is Synactive. We just doubled down the dose to 100 milligrams. And this is incredible when we talk about muscle stamina, muscle repair, muscle regeneration. That means more reps, and it means better recovery in between sets and then in between workouts. But ginsenoside RG1, the study that caught my attention was utilizing the original 50 milligram dose that we had. Now it's at 100. But they took muscle biopsies, pre-workout, post-workout, and 3 hours later, and saw a reduction in senescent cell burden within the muscle.
Wow.
And I know your group's no stranger of the zombie cells, right? And we could talk about senescent.
Muscle, you don't want an overabundance of those, that's for sure.
And so putting that in, no-brainer. And then ginsenoside RB1, which is trademarked estrogen, and we use this in a lot of our formulas. This starts talking about and bridging the gut-muscle connection. And so this is a capsule formula, one of my favorites. And people feel this. It's not like, if you're doing body comp, you're not going to see this overnight. But what you will start seeing quicker is better workouts, and better recovery. And then when you layer into that with Ignite and all the benefits happening there, that's where we're really putting our bodies in a better position to thrive, both short and long term.
Yeah, I love that. I actually often, and I don't know if this is appropriate, but I will often take just psychologically, I take my longevity in the morning before I go to the gym. For me, I pop all four at once. I just hit them right out of the gate, because some people I know like to split it up. I really am not good at splitting up my supplements over the day. I often will forget the second dose. And I just figure, you know what, I think we talked about this and you said, yeah, there's sometimes you can't take a fuller dose because the body can't process it all at once. But in the case of this formula, I think you're fine to do that. So I tend to do it in the morning before I go to the gym.
It's whatever is going to achieve that compliance and convenience we spoke about earlier. But as long as you're getting the 4 capsules in per day, that's where the literature showed, with or without food, no difference, right? The estrogen's in there to not only facilitate better absorption, but also support gut health. And that's our secret sauce in a lot. But this has been an intriguing formula. Like I've younger people text me like they could feel a difference when they don't take it during workouts. I got practitioners in their 60s that are on their 3rd consecutive day skiing texting me saying, I have no business being on the slope today. It's the only formula I started taking different. Thank you for bringing this out.
Yeah. And
that and obviously the easy ones is, the Embodies, the Sika, Tanita scale, right? When you see the body comp improve, that's why you're on the right trajectory with a good formula.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I love that pair, the longevity with the Ignite. I think that, look, if you don't have metabolic dysfunction, don't do Ignite. But for people who, as we age, we naturally, and for women, as we come through menopause, we naturally become more insulin resistant. Getting that little extra help, and then getting the help on the other side to support the workouts and the muscle building and the whole 9 yards. I think it's a really nice, cool little package with 2 bottles. Lots of great stuff in there. All right. Anything else on that front? Because I'm about to jump over to immune and gut, because I think that's the next big nut. And, we could sit here, guys, for the next 3 hours, because there's telomere support, there's senolytic support, you've got we might have to mention Serenity at the end of this episode, because it's such an exciting stack. And frankly, if you can't rest well, none of this other stuff's going to work for you anyway. But we're gonna be disciplined, and then we'll just, if you guys want to hear more from Michael about all of his magical stacks, then we can just have him back at another time. Just let us know. So let's jump into immune and gut. You get to decide where we start here.
To me, I think it's the same. So, you kind of set the tone, and we'll tackle the connection and why it's so vital, why they go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. Go.
Oh, well.
So do you want to start with Prime Gut Health, Biorepair, or Immuno Reboot? Those are the 3 things we're going to talk about, you guys.
Let's start with, I think, what your listeners have a good grasp on, which is Prime Gut Health, and then we'll show them the Healthgevity advantage on new technology, which is the other.
Cool. Let's go.
Yeah, so we'll just dive into it. So, Prime Gut Health, I like to say that there's this incredible story behind it, but when you're dealing with leading functional, integrative, and regenerative practices for as long as I have, you get to see what they're using in their dispensary that are making the difference. So with Prime Gut Health, it just made a lot of sense to combine multiple formulas at the right dose into one formula, right? Because it's not the only formula many of us are walking out of. And we know that the majority of our immune system is in the gut. So it's about supporting those tight junctions, reducing the intestinal cell wall inflammation, but looking at things that they were turning to. Serum bovine immunoglobulins, Immunolin, from a great company, Intera Health. This is over 40 published human studies. When we think about the IgG, or SBIs for short, this is an incredible ingredient that binds to pathogens in the gut that we either don't want there or we don't want at the levels that they are. So very critical to a formula to have the immunoglobulin complex in there. But not rocket science. What about short-chain fatty acids? What about butyrate? There is so much data emerging on butyrate, and the form we're tapping into is tributrin. And the form is the trademark's core biome, the only butyrate proven to reach the colon. And at 1 gram, very meaningful dose. And we start stacking these together. And as of today, the only formula bringing both together in one formula. And then a lot of hype around probiotics. And I've been in this space for so long. I'm not as hot and hyped for probiotics. I do think they play a role, but usually not the only solution that you're going to leave and the only thing you're going to be on. Mm-hmm. But spore biotics, when we think about stability and be able to survive, whether it's even in the bottle over time, mm-hmm. and then when you're actually taking the probiotics and expecting a result, the spores are robust to survive different climates. And so looking at ID verified DNA sequenced probiotics, and the spores that we have in here have multiple human studies published on why we selected the ones we have. So we think about bloating and constipation, and also the advantage when you layer in with the other two. And then astragalus, we have estrogen in here again to improve the bioavailability of everything else that's in there. But the ginsenoside RB1 has a study on colitis and Crohn's, and actually also improving the microflora, the gut diversity in a favorable population. So this has 4 ingredients or 4 products in one. You can use it short term, you can use it long term. We have providers, after they put the fire out and they're rebuilding the house with their protocols, they may use a lower dose long term of this, but give somebody a lot of flexibility. This is one, actually, we've had doctors tell us it's changed the way they practice.
Interesting. That's really interesting.
It gets back to the functional medicine roots, that everything starts with the gut.
Yeah.
You heal the gut, and then you reassess to see what else might have also been dominoed and healed as well. So I think this is one, it's going to make a lot of people happy and add to their protocol, but elevate and upgrade.
Yeah. You know what I like about this is, and especially in the circles we move in, everybody's so, and look, BPC 157 is a fabulous peptide. It's a fantastic compound. And it's become the shiny object that everybody's really fixated on. And I find sometimes we forget about the other pieces of rebuilding the gut, right? And BPC is amazing, but it's not a one trick. It's not the only thing. And with the immunoglobulins, with the spore biotics, like, I just think that this is going at the problem from many different ways. And you can always stack a BPC on with this if you think you need it. But I do think that as a novel way or a different way of addressing gut health, this gives a really nice kind of alternative path to that goal. That's really, like, I just feel like BPC's taken the limelight for so long now that we kind of need to take a step back a little bit and say, yeah, you have your place, you're really awesome, and there's all the other players we need to pay attention to as well.
Absolutely. And rightfully so, right? BPC 157 is incredible. Many of your community, they're pulsing this in and out already. So it's, well, where do you go from there? You know, I'm a big fan of that, big fan of KPV, big fan of PEA as a lipid resolving mediator. These all play a role. And I think Prime Gut Health, if you're listening, it's the first time you've heard about it, or maybe you're on several of these individually, this could be a really special formula for you.
Yeah. And I do think, like, with gut health, like, even I don't particularly have massive gut issues, but I do think, like, once a quarter, once every 6 months, doing a 30-day run of this stuff, like, our gut is under enough pressure. In your case, in my case, we do a lot of traveling. We have a lot of circadian dysregulation. You're exposed to all the things. Like, once every 3 to 6 months, doing a 30-day run of something like this really is powerful in just shoring up your defenses. Like, don't wait for it to be broke, kind of thing.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's a great strategy. And even me personally, where I'm at in my protocol, I take one a day, right? So I'm not taking the full dose, but there as more of a maintenance to help my body support the daily insults it's coming under attack and all the stressors. Cool.
All right. I love it. Actually, I wanted to ask you something. With the estrogen, is there any indication that says be careful? Like, if you're stacking 2 or 3 different formulas that all have estrogen in it, do we have to be mindful of not going over a certain amount? Because you know how that can happen sometimes. The recommended dose might be 100 milligrams, but if you're taking 3 different supplements that all have it, you may end up at 300 milligrams. Is there a point of diminishing return or a negative to that?
No, and it's actually designed that way where you're seeing it in a few formulas, but the colitis study was using 100 milligrams of estrogen. So
Okay.
most people that are on the Healthgevity formulas, you're going to be at that 100 milligram and have even better access. Because in the practitioner channel, you're seeing a lot of brands turn to bioperine, black pepper, as an absorption enhancer, but there's some negative things that come with that, right? We see it can block cytochrome P450, and there's some drawbacks to that. So a lot of our practitioners are asking for a way to enhance bioavailability and not use bioperine. And that's how we found the group, New Live Science, that are bringing to life a lot of these ginsenoside and astragalus combinations and are committed to research. And they're one of our premier partners. And for that reason, we've seen blood chemistry with or without estrogen in these formulas. And it's been a difference maker. Nice. With helping utilize.
Okay, I love that. So cytochrome P450, you guys, just so you know, is a liver enzyme. So bioperine that's what you're talking about, right? Yeah. And so bioperine can have a bit of a negative impact on that enzyme. And that is one of our enzymes that helps to detoxify certain compounds that our body has to process, our liver needs to process on a daily basis. So not that bioperine out of the gate is bad, but just that, there's, again, like, you don't want to overdo it on that front because it can have a dark side, put it that way. Okay, so that's our Prime Gut Health. Now you have a couple of new players that we're going to talk about. We have the Biorepair and we have the Immuno Reboot. So, but why don't we start with Biorepair, because I think we're still kind of in the gut world. And then the Immuno Reboot is going to it's going to move us more over into a pure immune support world.
I think that is a great strategy. And this is a formula, I read about this group doing incredible research out of Israel called Malak. And when I read about this company, similar to Noritas, right, they're leveraging AI as a facilitator to identify, in this case, fragments of proteins. So these are biofunctional proteins that they're discovering. They're actually looking at breast milk mimetics and proteomics. And so here they're looking at colostrum.
Yeah.
And the colostrum craze, right? And so with their lab, they're analyzing and identifying fragments within colostrum that are most therapeutic for an intended target. Like I said, similar blueprint of what Noritas is doing, but a little different. And so here they're identifying fragments, then they're identifying the dose most meaningful for humans, and then they're able to create a pattern of that protein to be 95% biosimilar to breast milk.
Wow.
And this is getting back into some research I was part of over a decade ago. Seeing that, okay, we see things like human milk oligosaccharides building a gut for an infant, but what about an adult with gut dysfunction? We saw, with the medical food that the 2FL human milk oligosaccharides played a vital role. So I've been on this breast milk mimetic journey, and this has been a real focus in the second half of 2024, where's the trends going? So this group has identified two different fragments, one most meaningful for the gut and the other most meaningful for muscle repair. And it makes sense, right? Everything's interconnected. And when I looked at the activity of the protein, I've never seen anything like it. When they actually are listing out IgG-like domain, which I didn't even know what that was at first, glycoproteins breakdowns. I mean, the fact panel of Biorepair is unlike anything you're going to find in the world. And the Healthgevity spin on it is, well, rather than pick one or the other, with the population that we're serving, we wanted to stack both together at the full study dose. Because, these ingredient companies, they research and they say, you can use 100 milligrams to kind of, claim something's happening. And in this case, the full dose is 340 milligrams. We want full dose on both, stacked together to create this wide net in the body on a gut standpoint, on a muscle standpoint. These are things as we age, it's not one or the other. They go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And Biorepair, you can call it colostrum on steroids, but we're kind of trying to coin these biofunctional proteins or glycoproteins. This just launched. As of today, we're the only company in the world
with this. Amazing.
And
I love it's almost like you're looking at a compound that works really well and saying, well, how can it work better? Right? Like, how is there a way to make it more bioavailable to the body? Right. And so it's just it's scratching beyond the surface a little bit, and always looking at, is there research to back it up? Is there data? And then going to the practitioners and saying, all right, is this playing out? Like, is this actually working for you guys?
Yeah. How does it translate into real world?
Like real life.
Yeah.
And studies aren't real life. Like, even studies are great, but it's certain populations and certain circumstances. And so seeing how this plays out in a more varied population is really where you get the real value. All right. Our second to final contestant here is your new baby that's only available at the time of this recording. It's only available for pre-order. No, it's already available. The Immuno Reboot it's out.
It's in your hands. You have it.
I have it. That's right. It's in my hot little hands. It was another one I was thinking of that was available for pre-order. But okay, so talk to us a little bit about Immuno Reboot.
Yeah,
I hope you guys are still with us, because this is kind of gold. You don't often get a guy like Michael who's going to dig into how he's building his formulas here. This is a bit of a geeky episode. I'm not going to lie, and I'm going to say it in the intro again. So if you've listened to the intro, you've heard this. But this is, I just eat this stuff up. So I hope you guys are still with me, because I think this is fascinating.
We'll get them to perk up if they're dozing off. But this one is so special. So I read about this company. Again, we look at things, people that are raising major money. This group out of New York City raised, as of today, almost $100 million. Like, what are they doing? What's happening? But this is a group of 35 scientists, 10 PhDs. They started this lab on Park Avenue, and it was during the infant formula shortage. And these food scientists stood up and said, enough's enough. And they committed and built a company and built a lab on creating human equivalent proteins. Wow. And I read about this company. I'm like, what? They're doing, okay, it's a good theory on paper, but they're probably a decade out. No. I had to go to the lab in person. I went to the lab. I saw the whole story. They are doing bioidentical proteins through fermentation. It is incredible. It is the future, but it's available now. And I it has to be research backed. It's got to give me the chills, but I have to have the feel good exchange with the founders and the research team, right? I want to know, where is their heart in the right place? Anyone can raise money.
Yeah.
And some people raise money and never even commercialize a product, but where they are today, where do they want to go tomorrow? And where does Healthgevity fit? And when I learned about the technology that they're doing, it was a no-brainer to bring this in as soon as possible, be on the ground floor, because I felt so strong about the role that this is going to have into so many different patient populations. So let's unveil it. So the first bioidentical or human equivalent protein that they brought to market is lactoferrin.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
making a lot of noise, lactoferrin, these days. Yeah.
I underappreciated it, right? Yeah. And to date, even when you look at the data, the research is robust, and still all lactoferrin up till today was bovine derived. Mm-hmm. And so we really don't even know what we're sitting on right now. But, there's a great research paper. I know your group likes to read. The paper is The Lactoferrin Phenomenon - a Miracle Molecule, and the references are on our site. But it identified the role of lactoferrin at all stages of life and its role as a geroprotector. So the low-hanging fruit is lactoferrin's there to regulate and maintain iron homeostasis. So that right there is major. It also has antimicrobial properties. And this is where we start tying it into why we called it Immuno Reboot. Immune system modulation, that kind of goes hand in hand. It also is anti-inflammatory, and it has antioxidant properties. So what they're also seeing in their clinical work is that those taking bovine-derived lactoferrin is developing this immune sensitivity issue. And it's kind of like food sensitivities, right? Where it's not causing an allergic response, but it's wreaking havoc and could be interfering with some of your health goals. So, big buckets, when we look at women's health, we look at athletic performance, immune dysfunction, infectious diseases, but also, hand in hand, the longevity aspect of lactoferrin. So Immuno Reboot features the full 340 studied dose of the first ever human equivalent lactoferrin that is bovine free. And that's a big takeaway because some people don't do well with bovine and they're looking for an alternative already. But then it's the supportive cast, right? The Healthgevity approach is I don't do a lot of standalone formulas. I want that wide net. And so getting back to the discovery we were talking about a decade ago with the 2FL, which is the most abundant human milk oligosaccharides, again, also most prevalent in breast milk. It is a incredible prebiotic. We look at its ability to support the gut-brain axis. We look at the gut barrier modulation and function, microbiome homeostasis that's achieved, and even the immunomodulation. This is all achieved here. And I wanted to fill up the 2 capsules with as much 2FL that could possibly fit. So you're getting 1 gram.
Wow.
Now, the last piece, although the smallest dose is a postbiotic called Amuse. This is a postbiotic that has 15 human studies published. And it's there to regulate and orchestrate the immune response. So this has all those studies talking about modulating things like the natural killer cell activity, killer T cells, helper T cells, and B cells. So when you layer in what this postbiotic's doing with the lactoferrin and the human milk oligosaccharides, this is why calling it Immuno Reboot was the name it's there
1, 2, 3.
to revive, repair, regenerate at all stages of life. And so, and I don't know when this will air, but I know you're doing the sweepstakes right now where we're giving away 2 bottles, but this is a game changer, right? This is so important about the trajectory of who Healthgevity is, where we're going. We're partnering with the greatest emerging technology companies to then get this in a formula in your hands as efficient as possible.
Yeah, no, and as complete as possible, right? I was looking around. I wasn't distracted. I was like, I know I brought that bottle down at some point. I was going to wave it around, but I can't find it right. It's not in front of me. But what's interesting to me about Immuno Reboot is so many of the formulas have a long list of ingredients. With Immuno Reboot, like you found 3 powerful ingredients, and that was it. Like it's 1, 2, 3. It's the 1, 2, 3 punch. It's I'm really excited to see how that formula delivers in market because all the research is there. It's sure, and and the lactoferrin is one of those ingredients that, to your point, it's kind of like always looked better on paper than it's delivered. And so it's about finding that right form and pairing it with the right things to really start to see it perform.
Yeah, and in other combinations, I think historically lactoferrin, when you can find it, is usually on its own.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we got the 1-2 punch tied in with that. I'm excited. I can't share more about other proteins that are undergoing discovery process with this group, but we're just getting started.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. Okay, we're going to close it off with the final piece and actually this final piece fits in with building muscle, proper metabolic health, proper immune support, and good gut health. It's called sleep. And right, if we were gonna take a package and wrap it up and put a beautiful bow on it, I think that this final entry into your product offerings brings it home. And it's got a beautiful name. It's got a beautiful little bottle. It's kind of lavender. It's got a lavender label on it, and it's called Serenity. And when I first looked at it, I told you I was in the middle of this crazy time last week. I wasn't in a place where, frankly, I probably needed it more than ever, but I was too under fire to really even be able to figure it out. And it's got a couple of really, really powerful components in it. As a matter of fact, I was staying with a practitioner, and when she looked at the label, she's like, "Oh, I love DHHB. This has got to be fantastic. And this is for those of you guys who find yourself going to bed wired and tired. You're exhausted and you're still buzzing from the day and buzzing about what's coming tomorrow. So tell us a little bit about how you build this beautiful formula to bring us serenity before we drift off to sleep.
It's a big one. And this was one we had to get right. Our practitioners were coming to us having issues really finding natural therapies that could solve these major buckets: anxiety, stress, cortisol, and then getting to sleep, that stressed, wired, and tired that you spoke about. So in analyzing the latest and greatest ingredients and to create this wide net, this stack, we wanted to build off an ingredient I've had a lot of success with, and a lot of our providers had success with. It's dihydrohinochiol. So DHHB for short. If you've used magnolia bark, perhaps you've also used hinochiol. Dihydrohinochiol is 20 times stronger. It's hard to get. It's expensive. And so you do see some companies, if they are grateful enough to have access to it, it's usually 7.5 milligrams. It's usually on its own. We wanted to do a 2 capsule serving to allow dosing flexibility. That's a key theme here. And at 15 milligrams. So we wanted to create something that you can turn to and will work on the first dose in 20 minutes or less. That's the bar we set for ourselves. And so we worked backwards. And again, 2 capsule was our max we wanted to be in. 15 milligrams of dihydrohinochiol. Then from there, I've been just getting more and more in love with saffron the more I read about it. Afron is the trademark saffron that's the most published form of saffron. At 28 milligrams, it gives us access to all of their published studies and all of their claims. So you have the saffron in there for not only anxiety, but for the negative mood that usually goes hand in hand.
That's interesting, because most people, saffron, they're thinking, oh, it's that spice, if it's even on their radar. And if you're someone like me, oh, it's that spice that if you get it on your clothes, you're cooked. It's never coming off. It's actually a dye. So tell us about saffron and calming the nervous system.
Yeah, and this actually showed it played better in female populations. So when we looked at what it was doing for anxiety, and there was also some sleep studies, it also was helping with depression. And I'm just like, it made a lot of sense because anxiety usually comes other issues, right? Yeah. So, and a couple of the practitioners and advisors we spoke to in evaluating the potential formula were like, wow, how has no one done this yet? I'm like, I know it made a lot of sense. I don't know why no one else has paired these together. Yeah. But then it was like, well, where do we go here, right? So L-theanine, I love, an adaptogenic, right, modulator. We love those. 200 milligrams, solid dose. That goes in here, right, to this big wide net. And there's this other trademark form of holy basil with unique label activity. If you look at our fact panel, you're always going to see the most robust activity of the ingredients we select. The holy basil had published studies with humans, anxiety and sleep. And even on the sleep, they were looking at hair cortisol, like just crazy metrics that they were looking in their clinical studies. So we put that in here. The last ingredient, the secret sauce, the Healthgevity spin, is a incredible startup group out of MIT called Verbiotics. They are analyzing thousands of different strains of bacteria. This is called LP815, L-Plantarum 815. It is a gut-brain access precision probiotic. And what it's doing on a microbiome standpoint is putting the body in a position to produce GABA consistently throughout the day, rather than supplementing GABA where you get a spike and then a crash. And then it just fit in perfectly with the dihydrohinochiol. And so you see all these ingredients working together, working fast. At medical conferences, we hand out these little sample bottles and the doctors come the next day. And it's just so Michael, you got to see my Oura Ring score. I haven't slept this good and I'm not even in my bed at home. I'm like, I'm not surprised, but we're, just grateful for the opportunity to see firsthand what the formulas that we bring to market can do. But this is a major area. I mean, I know we laugh about it, but there's so many people struggling with stress and anxiety right now. And you think about what's there to turn to. This is something where hopefully if you're listening, you'll consider Serenity as a first line of therapy to try. And again, story, 1 to 2 caps, see how your body feels.
So, I mean, what's great about this one also is it doesn't have the, melatonin I think is fantastic, but I think melatonin needs its own little universe. I love that this doesn't lean into it and it takes a different route. Also, I'm curious if can people use it during the day, or is it actually going to make them sleepy? Because I think what's interesting about this conversation is you keep saying stress, anxiety, sleep. And I just recently released an interview with Dr. Joe Cohen, who is behind a device called the Soul Tech. And the Soul Tech goes after sleep through the pathway of resolving anxiety, right? And stress. And I think in this formula, I'm seeing the same thing here. This is the same approach. We need to calm the nervous system down so that you can actually go to sleep. But it sounds like because you don't have the melatonin and the other kind of knockout the components in there, this is a formula you could probably use during the day if you're feeling like you're hanging off the ceiling and your teeth are chattering.
This was designed to be a daytime formula. And what we started seeing is doctors themselves and their patients using it before bed. And it makes sense, right? It's not going to help you stay asleep. It's going to help you get asleep, but it's 24/7 support. We call this nature's chill pill without the loss of motor function.
Right. Perfect.
And that was the advantage, is to bring to market something that gave you flexibility, fast acting for when you needed it most.
Yeah. Well, and I would argue, like, you don't think it'll help people stay asleep? Like, I think if you can calm the stress and the anxiety, if that's the thing that's waking you, I mean, obviously, if you're waking up because your blood sugar's tanking or whatever the case may be, this isn't going to be the solution for you. But if anxiety and stress is at the root of
then
what might be waking you up at 2 or 3, like, this might be something that can be helpful.
And that's that's the feedback we're getting on a diagnostic and tracking side. That's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And so we kind of got into the sleep market without this being a sleep product. We actually, to tease your community on VIPs, we actually have 2 peptides undergoing clinical studies right now in Australia, PeptiSleep and a glucose control peptide. So just to kind of tease a little. So we got some things coming in 25 that'd be more for sleep, cortisol, and
like
glucose.
More directly. Yeah. But this one, I think, as an elegant kind of sidebar into sleep is a beautiful approach. Well, Michael, we've actually managed to fill an hour. Why am I not surprised? This has been great. Like, I have to say that I love your passion, and I mean, from the time we met, like, your passion and your relentless curiosity and the way that you go find these companies, and the fact that I got to meet these guys, I got to look them in the eye, I got to make sure they're not here just to make a quick buck and head for the hills kind of thing. Everything about how you've built your company really is reflected and in you, and I think that's a huge piece of the puzzle here. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you, because I think you're so committed. And you and your wife at the shows, manning the booth, like, I just love what you guys bring to the table, and really powerful solutions. So thank you.
Well, thank you. You're incredible. And our commitment to you and your community is we won't stop.
Yeah.
We will keep pushing forward. We will keep creating products to help the most amount of people that are ready to be healed and continue that journey. We talk a lot, but for your community, have an open line to us. Email us if there's white space, if there's things that we could be doing better or not addressing. Let us know. We could be best serving you.
Thank you. Okay, well, that's phenomenal. That's a great offer. And I can tell you guys, the man is sincere. He's actually jumped in before into our membership community just to sit and chat with the people. And I think you're going to come back someday soon. I'm hopeful. I think they'll be all over it. So folks, if you're listeners to this podcast, you get a straight line to Healthgevity's products. So you can, if there's anything here that you heard about today that resonates for you, that you think, wow, I think that might be something that could really help me out with whatever it is you're working on, you can go to healthgev.com and use discount code NAT10, But Michael, where else healthjev.com in and of itself is a treasure trove of information. Like you don't keep too much hidden behind the wall. So how else can people connect with you guys and reach out?
It's all about full transparency. Instagram at HealthJev, and through your practitioner. I think it's just so critical to get that workup, get the assessment, look under the hood, see what's going on. Yeah. I think that's a great place to be. The website, like I said, labels are there, the stories there, references are there. So if you want to dig deeper, we'll be along the journey with you.
For sure. And that advice of going to your practitioner is a good one, because like we said at the beginning, and I'm really committed to this with people, is, we've just made all these things sound really awesome and like the thing that you need right now. And it might be the thing that you need right now. And for some of you, you will know that. But for those of you who are kind of confused and scratching your head going, I don't really know if this is the thing I need right now, this is where you reach out to your practitioner or your coach and help them to figure out where do I begin? Because there's an order of operations to addressing health issues. You can't, I think what we both see a lot of, and what practitioners see a lot of, is people who are so desperate to solve their problems that they try to solve them all at the same time and throw everything at themselves. And I do think there's a point where the body's kind of like, whoa, like too much incoming here. Like I can't deal with all this all at once. And so it's understanding, where do you begin? And I think that's where getting the right support from the right people can be really important.
Well said.
Michael, thank you.
Thank you.